श्री गणेशाय नमः। श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम्। सुखं नित्यं स्वप्रकाशं व्यापकं नामरूपयोः अधिष्ठानं बुद्ध्यबोध्यं बुद्धेर्दृग्यत्तु निर्मलम् अपारं सर्ववेदान्त वेद्यं प्रत्यक्परं महः तदेवाहं न मत्तोऽन्यत इति मे निश्चिता मतिः। We started with the analysis of who is Kūṭastha, Jīva, Ishvara and Brahman. 4. One and the same thing expressed in 4 different ways, appearing in 4 different ways. That is Kūṭastha, Jīva, Ishvara and Brahman. Why did this topic occur? Where did it start? It started with the question that it is hard to believe that there is oneness between Jīva and Brahman. I accept Jīva is Ananda Swarupa. Accepting that Jīva has Ananda Swarupa as its quality same as that of Brahman is fine. I can understand. But to understand their oneness is difficult because all the other evidences which are available point in the opposite direction. Then how can I understand the oneness between them? For which the example of 4 spaces was given. We started with 4 types of space. One was Ghatakasha, second Jalakasha, third Abhrakasha and fourth Mahakasha. Keep this sequence same. Don't change this sequence. Ghatakasha, if you want to say it in English, understand pot space. So the space enclosed by pot. Jalakasha, now that pot is filled with space, filled with water. And space that has stars etc., that space is reflecting in that water inside the pot. That reflected space and the space that already existed and still is existing inside that pot, those spaces together are called Jalakasha. Understand one thing, because Akasha is Vyapaka and Sukshma, it can never get replaced by water. It can never get replaced by water. So there is Akasha, that is Ghatakasha, and space reflected in water together are called as Jalakasha. Now the space is reflected in water particles also. Which water particles? Water particles contained in clouds which are suspended in space. So the total space and space reflected in those water particles, they both together are called as Abhrakasha. And the total space is called as Mahakasha, the space which is in and through this entire creation. Now, how to correlate these with Kūṭastha, Jīva, Ishvara and Brahman, that is being explained. Chaitanyasya Chaturvidhya Varnanam. चैतन्यस्य चातुर्विध्यवर्णनम्. So, fourfold explanation, description of Chaitanya. Upodghata, the beginning, the introduction. He Somya, Chaturvidhakasha Lakshana Muktam. I have already explained the four types of space and their Lakshana, characteristics, pointers, qualities, attributes. Chaturvidha Chaitanya Lakshanam api Uchchamanam Shrunu. In the same way, understand the fourfold Chaitanya, the pure consciousness, expressed in four different ways. Tasya Shravanamatreena Vichaarasya Mahaphalam Brahmajnanam Avapyet. By thinking upon that, or by understanding that, Shravanamatreena, by listening alone, Vichaarasya Mahaphalam, that which is the greatest result or the ultimate result of Vichara, enquiry. And when enquiry we had seen, it is nothing but Shravana Manana Nididhyasana alone. Shravana Manana Nididhyasana on Jīva Brahma Aikya. Mahaphalam, what is the Mahaphala, the ultimate result? That is Brahmajnanam. Brahmajnana, knowledge of oneness. Avapyet is gained, will be gained. Avapyeta. Kūṭastha Varnanam. So, now Kūṭastha is being explained, described. Here, certain terms are going to be used, such as Vyashti, Samashti, Adhishthana, Vishishta, Visheshana, etc. Vyashti is individual. An individual component is Vyashti. Samashti, all individual components put together, is Samashti. Vishishta is qualified. Vishishta is qualified. Then Visheshana is with adjective or adjunct, or adjective to be precise. Visheshana, adjective. How it is to be understood, when we come to that explanation, there we will see. Adhishthana, the support, substratum, the basis because of which the other thing is existing. Locus, if you want to say. Let's now begin. Buddhehe vyashtya-jnanasya va adhishthana-bhuta-chaitanyasya Kūṭastha ityabhidha. Abhidha, the direct meaning. Buddhehe, of buddhi. Vyashtya-jnanasya, vyashti ajnana. Ajnana, ignorance is everywhere. Everybody is ignorant. But when an individual component is looked at, that individual ignorance belonging to one buddhi of that one particular person or Jīva. Let's keep it to one particular person for now. Or Adhishthana Bhuta Chaitanyasya, or Adhishthana Bhuta Chaitanyasya. The Adhishthana Bhuta Chaitanya, Adhishthana, the support, the substratum of that Chaitanya, Kūṭastha iti abhidha. Kūṭastha is the direct meaning. Yanmate, now explanation is being given. Yanmate, in the understanding of those buddhi vishishta chetanaha Jīvaha. Jīva is that who is qualified by buddhi. Chaitanya, consciousness, qualified by buddhi. The attribute here given to Chaitanya is buddhi, intellect. That consciousness is Jīva. For those who take Jiva's definition in this way or understand Jiva in this way, for those tanmate in their understanding, बुद्ध्यधिष्ठान चेतनः कूटस्थः इति उच्यते. बुद्धि अधिष्ठान, बुद्धेः अधिष्ठान, अधिष्ठान of that buddhi. Which buddhi? That which is qualifying the Chaitanya. The adhisthana, the support, substratum, locus of that buddhi, intellect. Chetanaha, that consciousness, which is the locus, that is called as Kūṭastha. We will read through the whole paragraph and then understand this again. Yatra tu mate. But for others, those who understand, व्यष्ट्यज्ञान विशिष्ट चेतनः जीवः. व्यष्टि अज्ञान विशिष्ट. व्यष्टि अज्ञान, individual ignorance, avidya. Avidya, ignorance belonging to one individual. Chaitanya, qualified by that individual ignorance. That Chaitanya is, or those who say Chaitanya qualified by individual ignorance is Jīva, in their understanding, tanmate, व्यष्ट्यज्ञानाधिष्ठान चेतनः कूटस्थ इति वर्ण्यते. The substratum of that vyashtyaadhisthana, substratum of that vyashti, that chetana, that consciousness is Kūṭastha. Atrayam siddhantah. Here, this is the rule. जीवत्वापादकं विशेषणं यत् तदधिष्ठानस्य कूटस्थ इति नाम. That which gives that adjective. Now, even though they have used visheshana, here you have to understand in the context of upadhi or attribute, or understand it in this way simply, rather than going into attribute, upadhi and confusing ourselves. Take it this way: that which qualifies Chaitanya to be Jīva, that which qualifies Chaitanya to be Jīva, that which gives Jivatva, Jivahood, the adhisthana of that part, let that be upadhi, etc. The adhisthana of that upadhi is Kūṭastha. Understand here. Here it is Jivatvapadakam. Apadaka, giving. What is being given? Jivatva is being given. Therefore, the upadhi, the attribute, is also at individual level. Vyashti. Ayam Kūṭastha utpatyadi rahitah. This Kūṭastha is utpatti adi rahita, is without any birth, etc. Birth, death, sustenance, etc. So for this Kūṭastha, there is no birth, there is no death. It is eternal, nitya. Asya ayam abhiprayah. This is the meaning. This is the conclusion. ब्रह्मणः व्यतिरिक्ततया चिदाभासः यथा उत्पद्यते न तथा कूटस्थ उत्पद्यते किंतु ब्रह्मरूप एव स भवति. Just as Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness, is born as something which is different from Chaitanya, in the same way, the Chaitanya is not, Kūṭastha is not born different from Brahma. He is Brahman alone. Kūṭastha is nothing but Brahma alone. Brahma Rupa eva sabhavati. He is Brahma Rupa alone. Yatha, just as Ghatakashah Mahakashanna Vyatiriktah. Just because the pot is enclosed within space does not mean that space is different from total space. As space, those both spaces are one and the same. किंतु महाकाश रूप एव भवति तद्वत्. Just as pot space is nothing but Mahakasha alone, in the same way, Chaitanya, which is at the individual level available as the adhisthana of that attribute, upadhi, limiting adjunct, which gave Jivatva, which was the cause of Jīva. That Chaitanya is nothing, is called as Kūṭastha, and that Kūṭastha is nothing but Brahman. Ayam cha Kūṭastha Atmapada Lakshyartha. This Kūṭastha is Atmapada Lakshyartha. Lakshyartha of the word Atma. कूटस्थस्यैव प्रत्यक् इति निजस्वरूपम् इति जीवसाक्षी इति च व्यपदेशः. This Kūṭastha alone has been explained, expounded in with different names such as Pratyak, that which is innermost, Nijaswarupam, one's own true nature, Jīva Sakshi, the witness consciousness of Jīva. In this way, the Kūṭastha is Ghatakasha Sthaniyaha, in place of Ghatakasha pot space. Let's understand the whole thing again in one sequence. Now, when you say Kūṭastha, there is direct meaning associated with that word and there is indirect meaning, the meaning which is pointed by that word. Buddhe, of buddhi, or of vyashtya ajnana. Now let's think about this vyashtya ajnana here. In reality, ajnanam is one at the same. There are no parts in ajnana. There are no parts in ajnana. But when its effect is seen on individual component, there it is said to be the individual ignorance. There it is said to be individual ignorance. Take it this way. It's night time. It's totally dark outside. You are in the most remote place that you can imagine. There are no street lights, and it's new moon day. There is no moon in sky. So there is total darkness outside the house. You are inside your room. Now the lamp which is in your room gets switched off. It goes away. Now, what do you say? There is darkness in this room. But in reality, there is darkness everywhere. Actually, there is darkness everywhere. But for the sake of expression, you say there is darkness in this room. Now, do you mean to say the darkness which is inside the room and outside everywhere is same or different? We can't say it is different. Yet, because we are concerned with that individual room or house, we say the darkness in the room. The room is dark now. In the same way, when it is associated with Jīva or Upadhi, that is Buddhi, etc., that becomes Vyashtya-jnana. This has been taken in two ways by different people or different acharyas in their way of explaining. One stick to Buddhi or intellect, and some stick to Ajnana, Vyashtya-jnana, individual ignorance. So in one place we have Buddhi and in one place we have individual ignorance. Either Buddhi or individual ignorance. The Adhisthana Bhuta Chaitanya of those both, the Adhisthana Bhuta Chaitanya of those both is the meaning of Kūṭastha. Now, here the word they have used is Abhidha. Why they have used the word Abhidha? Because still you are identifying that Chaitanya along with the Upadhi for which it is substratum basis. Now, take away that substratum hood of that Chaitanya. Stop making that Chaitanya as substratum. What will it be? It will be Chaitanya. No more can you call that Chaitanya Kūṭastha. Why? Because Kūṭastha was the name given with respect to the earlier assumption that it was substratum for Buddhi or individual ignorance. Just as the pot space, even though we know it is Mahakasha, total space, that Ghatakasha was known as Akasha, yet it was different from Mahakasha. Why? Because we were still referring to Ghata. We are pointing out space. The same space which is in and through. So, Ghatakasha is Abhidha. Kūṭastha as Chaitanya is Abhidha. As Adhisthana Chaitanya. Kūṭastha as Adhisthana Chaitanya. Adhisthana coming from earlier Upadhi is Abhidha, the direct meaning. But what is truly being pointed out? Mahakasha. So when you connect that Kūṭastha to Mahakasha, then that becomes Lakshyartha. It becomes Brahma, Kūṭastha. This becomes Atmapada Lakshyartha. So, Ayam cha Kūṭastha Atmapada Lakshyartha. So for Atmapada Lakshyartha, Kūṭastha is, Atmapada Lakshyartha is Kūṭastha. Atmapada Lakshyartha is Kūṭastha. So Kūṭastha is understood, clear. Now who is the next? The next is Jīva. Again, let me clarify one thing. When it is said Kūṭastha iti Abhidha, This Abhidha is not referring to Abhidha, the direct meaning of Atmapada. What should be understood by the word Kūṭastha? When we are saying this Kūṭastha is implied meaning of Atmapada, there we are looking at Kūṭastha from different context. Let me explain it right now. In Tattvamasi, or you are Brahman, so that I am Brahman, in that I can refer to either Jīva and Atma. So that Atma has one, I as Atma has two meaning, one direct meaning and one implied meaning. So the direct meaning is going to be Jīva and the implied meaning is going to be Kūṭastha. But what is the direct meaning of Kūṭastha? Direct meaning of Kūṭastha is nothing but that Adhishthana Chaitanya. But in reality, what we should understand, rather than keeping Adhishthana, remove that Adhishthana alone and look at it as Chaitanya itself. Does that mean that it is going to stop being Kūṭastha? No. Because Kūṭastha is Chaitanya alone, Akasha is Akasha. So this is where we should not stop the inquiry and move further. Let's go ahead. Jiva Swarupa Varnanam. Who is a Jiva? Now, because earlier in two ways Jiva was explained, even though Jiva word was not used. One was Buddhi and one was Vyashti Avidya, intellect and individual ignorance. In these both ways, how Jiva should be understood is now being explained. Jiva Swarupam. Who is a Jiva? How do we understand Jiva? Ananta Koti Kama Karma Vasana Vasita Buddhau Pratiphalita Chaitanya Pratibimbaha Jiva iti Vidvadbhihi Uchyate. Vidvadbhihi, by wise people, by Jnani. In this way, Jiva is known or understood. In which way? Ananta Koti Kama Karma Vasana Vasita Buddho. Ananta Koti, of many millions. Many. Kama Karma Vasana. Kama, desires. Karma, the desire prompted actions. And Vasana, the impressions created by desire prompted action. Where are they staying? In intellect. So the intellect in which desires, desire prompted actions and impressions created by desires and desire prompted actions are living, in that intellect Pratiphalita Chaitanya Pratibimbaha, the reflection of consciousness which is available, the Pratibimba of Chaitanya, the reflection of consciousness is available, that Pratibimba, that reflection is called as Jīva. Nahi tat Pratibimba matram Jīva ityuchyate. But that reflection alone is not called as Jīva. Why? Let's go back to our earlier example. Kintu घटाकाश सहिताकाश प्रतिबिंबः जलाकाश इति कथ्यते एवं कूटस्थ सहित चिदाभासः जीव इति कीर्त्यते. So Jiva is not just the reflection, but that which is along with Kūṭastha. So evam Kūṭastha sahita chidabhasah Jiva iti kirtyate. So chidabhasa, reflection of consciousness along with consciousness which is the locus of that upadhi, is called as Jiva. Now, here it gets tricky. Why do I say tricky? Now you may think that now there are two consciousnesses which are available. One is the reflected consciousness and one adhishthana. And if you take it this way, sometimes, see, it is easy, it is good to remember it in this way just for the sake of understanding. But if you separate that reflected consciousness from the consciousness which forms its substratum basis, then you will land in trouble. That consciousness which is substratum, in a way, that alone is being reflected in the upadhi. If you want, take this example. Keep a mirror outside in the sun during afternoon in sunlight. Now, on that mirror, you are seeing the reflection of sun. So you are seeing the light which is coming from the reflection. At the same time, you are seeing the light which is coming from the original sun. So both lights are visible to you, even though you cannot see light directly. Let's, for the sake of understanding, let's say you are seeing that light. So in presence of sunlight, you are seeing that sun, reflection of that sun from which the light is coming. Do you differentiate between the lights of both? No. In the same way, the Kūṭastha and reflected Chaitanya, so that is Adhishthana Chaitanya and Pratibimbita Chaitanya, are merged together and appearing. But then, why do give explanation in this way? Because we cannot do away with substratum. In Chaitanya, that is the Adhishthana Chaitanya. You can go anywhere in the world, it will always be there before you. There is very beautiful one mantra, like, without going anywhere, it goes everywhere. And even before you, like, mind, which is the fastest, before mind can reach any place, the Chaitanya has already reached there. Why? Because it was already there. That's the beauty. Anyways, let's come back to here. So there is Buddhi, the Chaitanya which is reflected in that Buddhi, at the same time the Chaitanya which is forming substratum for that Buddhi. Those together are called as Jīva. Tasmat, therefore, Buddhistha Chidabhasa, Buddhistha Chit Abhasa. Abhasa, the appearance or reflection of Chit in Buddhi, and Buddhyadhishthana Chaitanya, Chaitanya which forms the locus of that Buddhi, in which Chaitanya is being reflected, the consciousness is being reflected. These both together are called as Jīva. Cha iti ubhayam militva Jīva iti siddhyati. He is called as Jīva. Abhasa Rupa Vivechanam. Abhasa Swarupa Vivechanam. Now, this Abhasa, this reflection, is being inquired into. Prak Bimbarupa Kūṭastha Sahita Chidabhasaha Jīva iti prapanchitam. Prak, earlier, before, Bimbarupa Kūṭastha Sahita Chidabhasa Jīva. Bimba Rupa, Bimba, that which caused reflection. Bimba, pratibimba. Pratibimba is a reflection and bimba is that which is being reflected. So that Chaitanya which is being reflected, that is bimba. What is bimba? The Kūṭastha. Bimba Rupa Kūṭastha. Sahita, along with that Chidabhasa. As I said earlier, the consciousness along with its reflection. They both together is called as Jīva. Ataha idam pratiyate. This is experience, is understood. Buddhau pratiphalitaha yaha pratibimbaha saha kūtasthasya natu bahya brahma chaitanyasya. Taking it in this way, we understand that the reflection which is available in intellect, buddhi, will be of Kūṭastha. That consciousness, Chaitanya, which is available at that particular individual level, and not the Chaitanya which is everywhere. In terms of Yasya pratibimbaha anyatra pratiyate sa eva bimba ityuchyate. That thing of which the reflection is available, that which gets reflected somewhere else, that alone is called as bimba, reflected. Prakrute Kūṭasthasya bimbatvangīkārāt Jīvaha tat pratibimba ityeva pratiyate. Prakrute, here in this topic, in this understanding, Kūṭasthasya bimbatvangīkārāt. If we take Kūṭastha as that which is reflected, we take Kūṭastha as that which is reflected, then Jīva will be the pratibimba, reflection of Kūṭastha. Tathahi atyanta rakta japa kusuma dhyuparistha swachha sphatike tat pushpadi raktima pratiyate sa cha sphatikadi gata raktima tat pushpadi pratibimba eva. Simple. Just as atyanta rakta japa kusumadi, rakta, red, atyanta rakta, dark red, japa kusuma. Japa kusuma refers to hibiscus flower. Japa kusumadi, upadhi, uparistha. So japa kusuma, those flowers, those dark red colored flowers are forming upadhi, conditioning. On that conditioning, what has been kept? Svachha sphatika, clear crystal. The clear crystal has been kept on that upadhi. Tat pushpadi raktima pratiyate. In that sphatika, the redness of those flowers is seen. Such a sphatikadi gata raktima, that redness which is seen in that crystal is tat pushpadi pratibimba eva, is the reflection of that, of those flowers or that particular flower. Tatha Kūṭasthāśrita buddhau Kūṭasthasya prakāśah pratiphalati. Buddhi which has taken ashraya of Kūṭastha, or buddhi for which Kūṭastha is substratum, in that buddhi prakasha, here prakasha, the effulgence, the chaitanyatva of Kūṭastha alone will get reflected, not of something else. Saprakasha eva chidabhasa ityuchyate. And that prakasha alone is called as chidabhasa. Atyanta swachha sphatikavat buddhi api atyanta nirmala. Just like real crystal, intellect also is atyanta nirmala, very pure. Why? sattva-guna-karyatvat tasyaha. Because intellect is the product of sattva-guna. Intellect is the product of sattva-guna. Tatra pratifalita kūṭastha prakāṣasyaiva pratibimba iti samākhya. Tatra, in that buddhi, pratifalita, which is available, kūṭastha prakāṣasyaiva, the prakasha of Kūṭastha, so that effulgence, self-luminousness of Kūṭastha which is available, that reflection, that alone is called as reflection of that Kūṭastha. So the light which is coming from that mirror, that reflected light alone is called as the pratibimba. So the sun actually the sun which we are seeing inside the mirror is nothing but the reflected light. And the light in which we are seeing that reflection is the light of that original sun. So here, in other words, they have just explained what is pratibimba. बुद्धेः कूटस्थाधिष्ठितत्वात् बुद्धौ कूटस्थस्यैव प्रतिबिंब उचित इति जीवः कूटस्थ प्रतिबिंब इति पक्षः प्रदर्शितः. बुद्धेः कूटस्थाधिष्ठितत्वात्, because buddhi is kūṭastha adhisthita, residing in Kūṭastha, it has Kūṭastha as its substratum, that pratibimba which is available in buddhi will be of Kūṭastha alone, and therefore Jīva is nothing but reflection of Kūṭastha. Iti pakshaha pradarshitaha. This paksha, this one way of explanation has now been explained. So this is the one way of explanation. The other way, अथवा अथवा ब्रह्मचैतन्यस्य बुद्धौ प्रतिबिंब इति पक्षोपि संभाव्यते एव. There is another paksha, there is another way of explaining. Buddhau pratibimbaha iti is the reflection in intellect is not of Kūṭastha Chaitanya, the Chaitanya which has been named as Kūṭastha, but there is this reflection of original Brahma alone. तथा ही घटान्तस्थ जले बाह्य महाकाश प्रतिबिंब एव भवति न तु घटान्तस्थस्याकाशस्य प्रतिबिंबः. Just as space which is reflecting in that pot is not the space which is inside, but the space which is outside. In the same way, the Chaitanya which is everywhere, that Chaitanya alone is reflecting in that buddhi, even though the substratum for that buddhi is going to be Kūṭastha. That's not going to change. घटस्थ जले यावान् विस्तार उपलभ्यते तावान् विस्तारः घटान्तस्थाकाशस्य नास्ति. घटस्थले यावान् विस्तार उपलभ्यते, in place of that pot, the expanse vistar, as much expanse is available for that pot, tavan vistara, that much expanse, that much vastness, घटान्तस्थाकाशस्य नास्ति, is not for that घटान्तस्थाकाशस्य, of the akasha which is in that pot. घटस्थ जले उपलभ्यमान विस्तारः आकाशस्य प्रतिबिंब एव. So घटस्थ jala, the water which is contained in that pot, upalabhyamana vistara, the expanse which is available, that is akashasya pratibimba, that is the reflection of space. Tasmat बाह्यमहाकाशस्यैव घटस्थजले प्रतिबिम्बः वाच्यः. Therefore, the space which is outside, that alone is being reflected inside the pot. Simple. The space which is being reflected in the pot is vast, and that much space is not there inside that pot. Is it not? So when you are seeing reflection, you see moon, sky, etc. That space is vast, big. But space which is contained in that pot is small. व्यापकस् एवं बुद्धौ व्यापक ब्रह्म चैतन्यस्यापि प्रतिबिंबः भवितुमर्हति. In this way, inside intellect, that Brahman which is Vyapaka, the reflection of that Brahman also is available. व्यापकस्य ब्रह्मचैतन्यस्य प्रतिबिंबः न युज्यते इतीयमाशंका आकाशदृष्टान्तेनैव निराकार्या. यथा आकाशस्य व्यापकस्यापि प्रतिबिंबः संभवति तथा व्यापकचैतन्यस्यापि प्रतिबिंबः संभवेत्. Now don't say that Vyapaka Brahma, that Brahman does not have reflection. It should be understood just like we explained with respect to sky or space. Just as the sound pratidhvani is the reflection for space, in the same way Brahma also has reflection or can have reflection. You cannot say, in short, understand this in this way. This is the repetition of earlier. Don't say that thing which has form, rupa, that alone will have reflection. This is not the rule. Anything and everything, whether it has form or not, will have reflection. Therefore, Brahman which does not have any form will have pratibimba, will have its own reflection. Itham. See the second line. बुद्धिस्थ चिदाभासः बुद्ध्यधिष्ठान चैतन्यं च इति उभयं मिलित्वा जीव इत्युच्यते. The Buddhist Chidabhasa, the Chidabhasa, reflection of consciousness which is available in intellect, and consciousness which is available as the substratum for that intellect, both together are called as Jīva. Soyam Jīva Tvam Padavachyartha, that this Jīva is the direct meaning of Tvam Pada or Atma. Direct meaning, not the implied meaning. Implied meaning was Kūṭastha, the direct meaning is Jīva. Jīvastha Chidabhasam Vihaya Parishishtah Kevala Kūṭastha Eva Tvam Pada Lakshyartha. So Jīvastha Chidabhasa, take away that reflection, take away that reflected consciousness. What is left behind, that Kūṭastha, is Tvam Pada Lakshyartha, implied meaning of Tvam Pada. Aham shabdasya vachyartha Jīvaha lakshyarthastu kevala Kūṭastha iti vivekaha. Therefore, the direct meaning of Aham Pada is Jīva, and implied meaning of Aham Pada is Kūṭastha. Same way, direct meaning of Tvam Pada is Jīva, implied meaning of Tvam Pada is Kūṭastha. Further, there is more explanation about Chidabhasa, to which all the qualities belong, but that we will see next time. Om Asato ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya मृत्योर्मा अमृतङ्गमय। ॐ समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु। समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु। समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ। श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ।